Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. Thank you so much for spending some of your Tuesday with us. And if Donald Trump ever needed an example of how Canada and the United States are different, the expression, the British are coming, means two completely different things. To them, it is a warning. They are girding for war. Here, we roll out the red carpet because the king is here for the throne speech. And I'm very pleased to discuss this and so much more with my midweek panel for This Week in Politics. Please welcome Chris Chapin, Max Fawcett, and Warren Kinsella. Guys, it's great to see you. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Good to see you.
Okay, so let's talk about sort of the gist of the throne speech. King Charles said this, quote, "The Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun to define a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States based on mutual respect and shared interests to bring transformational benefits to both sovereign nations." Warren, you've been involved in throne speeches before. This, to me, sounds like these lovely words. I don't know that they mean anything. What do you think?
Well, it's pretty cool. Like, let's face it, like getting the king to read your throne speech, it's a lot better than the Speaker of the House of Commons.
Yeah.
So, the spectacle of it is pretty neat. But I think that, I think that the speech so far, he's reading it as we speak right now. It reflects closely the Liberal election platform.
Yeah.
The divergence is the point that you just made. At the end of March, Mark Carney appeared very solemnly before a battery of microphones and said, "Our relationship with the United States is over." But what you've just read to us suggests that maybe not so fast. Maybe that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I'm unclear, where the government is at on our relationship with the United States of America. But the rest of the speech, so far at least, reflects, what people voted for at the end of April.
And look at Max. Pomp, circumstance, pageantry, they do matter. Like there's a reason there are 21 gun salutes. There's a reason there are military flyovers. There's a reason we have parades. There's a reason that, the buildings, the national buildings that we have are imbued with history and value. Those things matter. To have a moment like this, when the king, our head of state, comes to Canada as a show of sort of what makes Canada different from, say, our neighbor to the south. There's real value in that. I subscribe to that. I wholeheartly am glad he's here doing this.
Yeah, there's value in reminding Canadians of, frankly, the beauty of our institutions and the pageantry. And, nobody is a bigger fan of this sort of pomp and circumstance than Donald Trump. He clearly desperately wishes for more of it in his own country. He's talked about having military parades and clearly thinks of himself as a monarch, if not being, even though that is sort of not how the system works down there. And so this is clearly, a message to him that he can't have what we have.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of time for the double talk. The idea that the relationship is based in mutual respect.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. There's no mutual respect.
Yeah.
I don't think that there have been folks saying that Carney is kind of walking back his previous statements, but he said that the relationship we used to have with the United States is over, and that remains true. That relationship is never coming back. We are now in the space of defining what the new relationship is going to look like. How close will we be on security? How close will we be on economic ties? And I think there's a lot of balls that are still up in the air there.
Listen, I agree with almost everything you said there, Max. Look, the relationship that Canada had with the United States under Pierre Trudeau was different than the relationship under Brian Mulroney and different than every successive prime minister after that. It wasn't over. It was just a change in personality led to a difference in the relationship. The dramatics of it's over and we've got to rebuild something new, to me, is short-sighted. It doesn't ring true in terms of the history that I know, but I do take your point. And now, Chris, I did note that the king mentioned the word catalyze, which confirms that Mark Carney had a hand in writing this. But he also talked about this being the most ambitious change in the Canadian economy since World War II. What do you make of that?
So far, Ben, I think the actions that we've seen from the federal government match that. I mean, it's going to take time, but we've never seen, for example, the breakdown in trade barriers that we've seen within the provinces and within the country ever. Certainly in
Yeah.
my lifetime, I think the speed in which the deadline they set for Canada Day, we're seeing the provinces smash down the provincial barriers. And I think that's a very good thing for our economy. It's been so silly for so long the way our federation has acted from an economic standpoint. And so the idea of them moving quickly, catalyzed or not, is I think very good for the
Yeah.
country itself.
Yeah, and look, as I've said before, the election's over. I put my sword down. I want to be as productive as possible. I'm not looking to score any cheap shots. I will take issue on policy. I will take issue if I think somebody does one thing and says one thing and does another. That being said, Max, do you remember when they announced a fentanyl czar, and why haven't we heard word one from this person in 3.5 months?
I vaguely remember that. But I mean, the reason why we haven't heard word one is because it was entirely designed to placate Donald Trump's irrational and factually baseless, belief that the fentanyl was coming from Canada. It was just a sop to his beliefs, and I think that's probably why we haven't heard anything, because there's no there there.
Yeah, but
the fentanyl.
Yeah, but Chris, last
The
week,
fentanyl's not coming from Canada, right?
But Chris, last week you had Kash Patel of the FBI doubling down, saying that they're all the Mexican cartels and the Chinese triads are all in cahoots up here in Canada, making more fentanyl than the world can handle.
Well, I actually do think there's a lot of truth to that, Ben. I think, I agree. When I saw the topic about the fentanyl czar, you could have paid me $1,000 if I could guess what the name of our fentanyl czar was.
I couldn't get
just,
it. Yeah.
No clue, absolutely no clue. But we have a real problem when it comes to fentanyl in this country. We have for probably the better part of a decade now. And so, unfortunately, as much as we joke about this role, I'd love to see it actually, mean something, because we have a real problem. We do have huge fentanyl labs here in this country, especially out on the West Coast, that we need to do a much better job, breaking down, shutting down, and getting this stuff off our streets, because, we do a lot of work in the addiction space. This drug is like nothing we've ever seen before on our streets. It's so toxic and so deadly. And so I think we need to be taking it far, far more seriously.
And Warren, if Max is right, and this is all a fiction created in the mind of the president of the United States, then wouldn't it serve us to have, I mean, if it's a performative position, wouldn't it serve us to have the performer perform and hear from him every now and then, so that the Americans would at least on the surface see that we're doing something?
No, I don't think it would, because nothing satisfies this guy. I mean, the facts have been known for months. In fiscal 2024, 43 pounds of fentanyl went from Canada into the United States, where were seized by Customs and Border people. In the same period, 21,000 pounds of it came from Mexico. And we're being lumped in with the Americans.
No, and Warren, I take your point. I believe your numbers. What I'm suggesting is, if the Americans are putting on airs that we are a problem, and we have named a fentanyl czar, then wouldn't it help us to be publicly looking like we're doing something with the czar that we appointed?
Yeah, no, I understand the question, but my answer is the same. It's not going to change their position when they're making crap up. They're making things up. So if we get into that space where we go along with their fiction, all of us have done it with our kids, at a certain point, you bump your leg on the furniture of reality. And so, no, I don't think we should say, yes, we are a big problem with fentanyl just to make Donald Trump feel better, because he'll find something new to come after us at.
All right.
And that has been the case. The reason why he did this is to get himself out of the terms of the free trade agreement that we've got with the United States.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Max Fawcett, you're up next, because I want to get your take on Alberta's position on what they're calling age-appropriate books in Alberta public school libraries. Don't go anywhere. This is the Ben Mulroney Show. The Ben Mulroney Show marches on with our This Week in Politics midweek panel with Chris Chapin, Max Fawcett, and Warren Kinsella. Max, I'm coming to you first because Alberta is laying the groundwork for a survey, rather the government is, for a survey on what is age-appropriate content for kids K through 12 to access in school libraries. This after a number of parents have complained that they found what they found to be inappropriate books available for their school-aged kids. On the other side of the equation is suggesting that this is a slippery slope that could lead to book banning. And so who's inappropriate here? Is it the schools for allowing these books in the first place, or is the government for coming in and being an arbiter for what is allowed and what's not?
I think it offers a very revealing window into Danielle Smith's approach to governing. She's very good at creating distractions that appeal to a small section of her base, very bad at governing in the best interests of all Albertans. And so, she said that this is not about book banning, this is about protecting children. Weird that she isn't as concerned about protecting children from the measles, which are just going crazy here right now.
Yeah, but hold on, Max, two things can be true at once. You can be right on the measles thing, but that doesn't address the issue of the books. And look, you say a small group of people. I mean, the parents represent a big chunk of the population. And if parents feel that, listen, my 2 cents, Max, when I was a kid, this was not an issue. Like what was appropriate and inappropriate, that wasn't even a debate as to what we found in school libraries. For some reason, it is today.
For sure. I think that was a debate back then. It just maybe wasn't aired as publicly, but it's a very odd sort of rearguard battle. If you're worried about protecting kids from information that you don't think is safe or you don't think is appropriate, can I introduce you to something called the internet? Because I think that's a much bigger threat than books at your local school library. A big part of the issue is that this government in Alberta has laid off a lot of the librarians that used to curate this stuff, used to manage the books that kids had access to, and made sure that it didn't get into their hands. Are there a couple of books that are probably a little over the line for some kids? Sure. Yeah. Should the government be getting into cracking down on their access to information and essentially sort of abrogating free speech? It feels like a slippery slope to me. And again, the internet is out there. That is the big concern. If you're worried about kids learning about LGBTQ issues or anything else.
Yep. Chris Chapin, I'm assuming there's a counterpoint coming my way.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, I see no harm whatsoever when it comes to consulting parents. I think, if anything, we should be consulting parents and the education of their children far, far more often than the opposite. But to Max's point about the internet, I get where you're coming from, but we're talking about kids in like K-9 here. And I think the bigger concern is those kids, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. Like, if you're a parent, you're letting your kids scroll the internet by themselves when they're, 6 or 7 years old, then that's a choice you make. But I think when you send your child off to school, there's a certain understanding and acceptance that what's being presented to them while they're at school is appropriate for them to pick a book off the bookshelf in a library and read. And I think the concern the Alberta government has right now is that those books simply aren't perhaps age appropriate for children to pick off the shelves. And so the idea of consulting parents, I think it's something we should do far, far more often. I think there's probably, the idea of a school board trustee is probably the least appreciated elected office in the entire country, that most parents should take a far, far more serious role in determining who they elect as their school board trustees. But I think in this case, what's the harm about sending out a survey to parents, asking them what they think their kids should be reading?
And Warren, I could make an argument that this is the most apolitical thing that the government could do. I could argue they're saying, listen, if you want to teach you can teach whatever you want to your kids at home, but at school we have guardrails in place to make sure that what we're teaching them sort of falls in line with the curriculum. What do you think about that?
I remember the days when conservatives said, I'm against government overreach, and here you've got a government doing overreach. I remember the days when conservatives would say that they believed in the free expression of ideas and a marketplace of ideas, and here she is messing in the marketplace. This is always every dictator first. I'm not calling her a dictator. I'm just pointing at the history. Okay. I'm pointing out the first thing every dictator does is burn books and ban books. That's what they always do. So, I've written 10 books. I've written an 11th that's coming out shortly. I would love for Danielle Smith to ban my book, because I know what I
It'll
would
shoot
do
to
as a
number one.
teenager growing up in Calgary. I would go and find that book. My dad, when he was in high school in Montreal, the books that the Jesuits said they couldn't read, those are the books they all read. So this is stupid. It's idiotic. It's performative, and it's not going to work. It's going to blow up in her face like so many other things that she's done.
Okay, well, in our last few minutes, I actually want to have a little bit of fun, because there are two videos going viral right now. And to me, they both feel like Rorschach tests, where you can imbue them with whatever your perspective is. And the first is Macron's wife shoving him in the face before they get off the plane in Vietnam. And the other is Mark Carney on his first day in the House of Commons, admittedly not knowing what the rules are, or more importantly, where the cameras are, shooing away Mélanie Joly. Which viral moment, and Warren, we'll start with you, are people reading more or too much into?
Well, I guess we don't know. The Jolie thing, Ben, as you know, I've never been a big fan.
Yeah.
I think she's possibly the worst minister we've had in the history of Confederation. However, I heard from a number of women readers this morning saying every woman in Canada understands what just happened. And even if they voted for Mark Carney, they don't like it.
Yeah.
It was, whatever you think about Mélanie Joly, it was condescending. And to many women, and we're all guys here, but to many women, that was profoundly sexist. So I think that one is going to have resonance for quite some time. The Macron thing, it's just kind of weird. I was impressed about his ability to change and react for the cameras as quickly as he did. But the Jolie thing, I don't know. I don't know if I find that one funny.
No, Chris Chapin, not funny, but I think, Warren, I think you pointed out on social media, like there will come a day where that doesn't roll off his back the way it is today. However, today it will roll off his back. Chris, what do you think?
I just think the Jolie clip's just so funny that, I mean, who hasn't been just shooed off like that in the middle of somebody focusing? And it just happens to be the Prime Minister's first day in the House of Commons. I found very, very funny.
Yeah, it was. Listen, and my producer said he saw that as somebody who was deeply intent on working and focusing, and somebody was distracting him. But I said, for better or for worse, it happened on the backdrop of what Warren Kinsella just brought up, which was sort of the appearance of not being very comfortable with strong women in his presence on the campaign trail. I said that may be true, it may be not, but it is a thing. And so that, to me, was something that stuck in my mind. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, I think both of them are like you said, Rorschach tests. If you want to see something, it's there. If you don't, it's not. But Carney has to be wary, and this is like thing number 200 on his list of priorities. But he has to be wary of the fact that he is getting a reputation in some circles for being a bit of a bro. There are concerns that the PMO is disproportionately filled with men, and I don't buy that. I think that is just something that people want to make out. But if he keeps getting caught in these sorts of moments where he appears to be sort of brushing women away or being surrounded by men, that will take hold. And I think he's fine for now, but as the months go on, his coat of armor is going to get a little thinner. And these darts are going to start to stick in there a little more.
Well, it's sort of, and listen, it happened to Justin Trudeau. That's not to say it will happen to Mark Carney, but with enough time and enough opportunity, all of a sudden, like a bell gets rung, and then you can't unring it. You can't unsee that thing, and all of a sudden, what you used to view in one way, you view in a completely different light, and that could happen to a Mark Carney. I'm not saying it will, and I'm not saying I hope it does, but it could happen. Anyway, to all three of you, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a great panel. I hope the four of us can do it again real soon. I appreciate you, and have a great week.
Thanks, Ben.
Sounds good.
And poor Macron, I don't know what the thing is with him. It's 2 videos in 2 weeks, that poor guy. He's got to be much more careful around the cameras. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today. It's been a great Ben Mulroney show. And of course, we can keep this conversation going on Twitter/X at Ben Mulroney. And don't forget, I will post the podcast for those of you who missed the show live. Thank you so much for joining us on Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.